Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. My wife and I have been married for over 16 years. We dated for 3 years prior to that, and we have been happily together ever since. Our beautiful baby boy was born into our life around 9 years ago, and everything has been perfectly perfect ever since. But recently, I've been feeling as though describing my life to be perfect has been quite the inaccurate contradiction. Although my wife and I have the jobs that we've always wanted, we have a daily routine that works conveniently for the both of us, and that still gives us time to spend with our beautiful son, whom we both love and adore unconditionally. I've been noticing a change in the behavior in my household. The change has been getting expressed towards me even though I haven't done anything to deserve it. What has happened is that my son has grown very distant and cold around me. The boy that I once knew that was so eager to see me and play around with me and tell me stupid, silly jokes and make me happy and smile every single day has barely been giving me the time of the day or showing me the worth of a glance. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't talk to me. He barely even responds to me when I address him, refuses to go out with me or beg to play soccer like he used to. He doesn't accept the gifts that I've been given him. And I've been feeling as though my efforts are all going to waste since nothing I do seems to make him any less distant or unresponsive with me. After I noticed this and talked to my wife about the recent changes, she informed me that nothing had changed that should make my son feel anything different towards me. I've been making active efforts to try and repair something that I didn't do. I've been apologizing consistently for the smallest of inconveniences. I've been taking him out and buying him toys and gifts to make up for whatever it may be that I did. And although it works temporarily, it hasn't fixed the root problem. Although I have talked to my son and tried to get him to tell me what's going on and tried to be strict with him or lean with him, nothing has been working, and I've been growing very frustrated with the matter. Recently, I went out to a bar with my friend on a random Tuesday night because I could no longer stand to be in a household that was once perfect, and that now no longer is because of something that is truly a mystery to me. My relationship with my family consists of my interactions with my son and my wife, as I'm barely in touch with anyone else, and my son has been rejecting me so aggressively and unexplainably, and that has influenced my mood and hence the way I behave around my wife. Basically, the events have somehow and unexplainably led to me feeling alone without a family in some sense of the word, or at least that's how I've been feeling. I really don't know how I'm going to fix this, but it's becoming the biggest problem in my life. Update. My fallout with my family has led me to flee being home and into a bar with my friend on a random Tuesday night, which is where the source of the solution for the problem begins in the first place. I was venting to him about how my son started rejecting me and we talked back and forth. We went over the cause maybe. Teenagehood is obviously not a possibility since my son is barely 9 years old. And a friend's influence is not a possibility either because he barely goes out of the house and has pretty much no friends. Not that we haven't tried to include him in social activities, but he flees them as soon as he can. So it's not because of social influences. And it's not because of hormonal changes either. It must be something that me or my wife directly did to cause the changes. My friend suggested that I try talking to my wife about it, and after I informed him that I did indeed talk to her, and she confirmed that there was nothing to be worried about or nothing that she could think of that could directly cause the change of attitude that my son has been showing towards me lately, my friend pointed out that there may be a possibility my wife could be lying to me. He said that these changes have been occurring for an undeniable reason. Perhaps because my wife's been seeing someone with her at work or outside of work that has been a better and more convenient person to be around for my son. For example, the things that I've been doing to try and compensate for things that I didn't do such before his attitude changed. Such as buying him gifts or taking him out or telling him silly little jokes and all the good stuff have been done by someone in that time that I wasn't doing them or just other things in general that made my son think that person was a better fatherly figure than I am. He suggested that I try to talk to my son about this particular topic and make him feel as though he's in trouble for it, after persuading him the way I usually do in healthy ways. And if he doesn't comply, I should push him a little bit and tell him that I already know the truth and that I already talked to my wife about the truth and that if he doesn't tell me everything, he's going to be in so much trouble. When my friend told me this and suggested that my wife would be cheating on me or lying to me about something that has clearly been causing me so much distress, I honestly couldn't take it seriously and immediately shut it down and said that I would never even think about it. It didn't help that I had an hour drive home in which the only thing I could think about was the reactions my son was giving. I couldn't help but question if there was some truth hidden behind my friend's words. As soon as I got home, I put my foot down and bit my tongue and decided to just go for it. I sat my son down after having played games for a couple of hours and going about trying to get him to talk to me or respond to me with something other than okay, yes, or no. And I realized that maybe putting a little bit of pressure on him would help get the information that I needed out quicker. I told him that I already know the cause and that everything was already in my possession, and if he didn't tell me the truth, he was going to be in so much trouble. I would take away all of the gifts I'd given him and I would no longer speak to him, which was something he was already doing himself, but I thought maybe that will work. The son then told me. My son looked at me straight in the eyes with terrified, glazed eyes and told me, "My mom knows everything, you should go talk to her. It's not my fault that he gave me the toys, I shouldn't be the one." He went quiet for a moment and looked at me and saw how stern my gaze at him was. He saw that the curtains were up and that time for lying was over, and finally he looked at me with wide open eyes and terrified expression that nothing was his fault and he only liked him because my mom said to be nice. Then he told my son to stop talking to me or else. "I just went with my mom," he said. "I wasn't the one who wanted to stop talking to you." He spoke to me in a tone that correlated to the fact of me knowing what actually happened. I obviously didn't know anything beforehand. This was only the start of the story. Honestly, I couldn't stand myself for having pressured and manipulated my son to that point, but I did hug him and tell him that it was all right. And then I sprinted downstairs to speak to my wife and find out what actually happened and changed my son's behavior towards me. I spoke to my wife at the same time that I had spoken to my son, that I already knew everything and that my son had already told me everything that went down, and that made him change his attitude towards me, which also indicated strictly that my wife was cheating on me. I told her that I knew about the other guy and that she's been sneaking around behind my back. She looked puzzled and despaired for a moment and denied. And then she realized there was no escape out of this. So she just put everything out on the table. She confessed that she'd been seeing a man that just isn't a person that I knew, but a man that my son did, a man that has been growing very close to my son. She explained to me out of the blue that she had fallen out of love with me and she no longer found joy and happiness in our relationship. Being with another person has explained to her that she needed to tend to her family, which is why she ended the relationship with the other guy and regrets every minute. I couldn't stand to look at her or be in her presence. I walked out of the house immediately and slept at a motel that night, where I decided the best decision to make would be to end the marriage and focus on my relationship with my son. My wife did try to contact me and get me to change my mind. My wife did try to contact me and get me to change my mind, but I couldn't fathom how stupid I was and how heartless she had to be to not only cause my faller with our son, but to dare lie to me all these months, knowing how much I loved him and how hard I was trying to get back to a high horse with him. Nothing could change my mind, and quite frankly, it was the best decision I've ever made. My son and I have gotten very close once again, and I found a person that loved me and my son and cares for us just as much as I'd like. In a sense, you could say that I did find my happy ending after all. Next story. Background: I took a job in Idaho and have been living away from my wife and daughter, who live in Atlanta, since July. My wife is staying in Atlanta for the time being until my daughter's school is over and the apartment lease is up. Now, I'm coming home for Christmas and my flight leaves at 7 a.m. on the 21st. My wife refused to pick me up from the airport and told me to get an Uber. She says that me asking her to pick her up is selfish on my part and she was embarrassed to tell her friends that I even asked. She says that as a man, I have to take care of my family and shouldn't have asked her to pick me up. That I have to find my own way home. Further stating that a normal husband would not do this. She goes on to explain that the drive to the airport is too far, my flight arrives too early, she has too many things to do, and she can't be expected to wake our 6-year-old daughter up early just to pick me up from the airport. I should also point out that an Uber or any rideshare from the Atlanta airport to my home is going to cost $60 minimum. I've always grown up thinking that you'd do anything for your family, including picking them up from the airport. But she's making it sound like I'm in the wrong for asking. But I don't feel like I'm in the wrong because this is the kind of thing that you should do for your family, and I can't understand her point of view. Am I the a-hole for asking my wife to pick me up from the airport? Edit. More details based on comments. My wife is not working on that particular day and my daughter is not in school. The airport is 38 miles from my home. Also, this should have been mentioned earlier, she nor I are paying for my ticket. I had to borrow money from my father, so it's my Christmas present now to afford to go. Why? Because she didn't want to spend money on the ticket. My job is full-time, her job is part-time. We can afford the ticket, but she told me not to pay for it with our joint account. So that is primarily why 7 a.m. is the best flight I could get, particularly in the week of Christmas. Additionally, throughout our marriage, she has told me many times how her friends' husbands are more successful than me and how much money they make. I took this job in Idaho because it paid more than being a substitute teacher, which is what I was doing at the time, and it was a great move for my career. So, when she says that she's embarrassed to tell her friends that I asked her, it stems from her measuring me to other husbands, who I guess could afford not to rely on family. My job is great, but I still have 2 connecting flights and it's a red eye. So not exactly luxury and not up to her standards. I will also point out that my wife does not like to drive. She turned down a bank job because it was a 20-minute commute from our home, while I was driving 45 minutes to an hour to my job at the time. So to clarify based on what I'm reading, she does not want to drive a long distance to pick me up. It's not about her routine or waking our daughter. It's the inconvenience of her having to drive that far. Not the a-hole for asking, but listen, your wife is effectively a single parent whilst you work so far away. It's also the holiday season and she has to worry about setting everything up, shopping, groceries, cooking for Christmas, etc. She might be feeling unsupported and snapped at you for adding to her plate. When you get home, check in on her and make sure she's coping okay. Also, does she have work? She might not be able to pick him up if she does. Does the kid have school? The 21st is a Tuesday. Schools in my area aren't letting kids out until Thursday for holidays. And those that are still doing online work have times they're required to sign in. I don't agree with her using "you're the man" as an excuse, but there might be more to it than that. Everyone sucks here. This is such a minor thing, but it's also probably emblematic of the larger problems in the relationship. I get that you want to have a convenient ride and see your family first thing after working far away and being alone. I also get that your wife doesn't want to be up at 5 a.m., wake the kid up and drive to get you when she's spent months functioning like a single parent and is also tired. Neither of you is acting with much compassion or understanding for the other person here. No a-holes here. You're not the a-hole for asking and she's not the a-hole for refusing. If my husband was flying in at 7 a.m. on a weekday, I'd tell him to get an Uber too, because I'm not driving down to the airport in early rush hour traffic to get to the airport, then back again. That's a total waste of time and gas, and it's probably even cheaper to catch a one-way Uber. Also, kids, school, my work meetings, all the other stuff that has to happen on a typical weekday morning. Next story. My wife and I fostered Mariana, 15 female, when she was 5 and adopted her when she was 8. Mariana is an only child and my wife and I both have good jobs, so we're able to give her more than what my other family members can give their kids. One of those things is we take Mariana on a nice vacation every summer. She's gotten to help decide where we go and helped with the planning since she was around 10. Family members try to join us, but we like to travel internationally and it's out of their budget, especially with 3-4 kids. They don't like that we won't go on less expensive vacations so we could go together. They also think it's absurd that Mariana gets to help decide where we're going and has veto power. Another thing is Mariana goes to a private $50,000 a year school. She's been going since kindergarten. The only reason we can afford to send her there is because I'm one of the assistant principals and with my discount, it barely costs anything to send her there. The same family members that I mentioned earlier have asked me to pull some strings and get their kids and let them use my discount. Then got mad when I said no because my discount only applies to my kids. Within that week, we got a few calls from prospective parents who were very angry about the fact that we don't advertise the fact that we have a gay administrator. My wife and I are both women and this is a religious school. We stopped talking to them after that but still ran into them at family gatherings. We ran into my brother and sister-in-law at a family gathering on Thanksgiving and they saw Mariana on her iPad. Mariana's school requires each student to have an iPad or MacBook, and we want Mariana to have the best resources available. So she has a 12.9-inch iPad Pro with 2 TB data and all the bells and whistles. They asked how much it costs because they wanted to get their daughter an iPad for her birthday and freaked out when I told them. They said we were turning Mariana into a spoiled brat and that we were always trying to make her look better than the rest of the family with her school, taking her on expensive vacations, and her clothes and electronics. She has clothes from expensive brands because she wants to fit in with the kids at her school, but most of it is either from the clearance section, thrift stores, or resale shops. I'm being told by other family members to not let her wear expensive clothes or bring her electronics at the next family gatherings because it makes my brother and sister-in-law upset that they can't afford similar things for their kids. Not the a-hole. You're literally giving a kid a life they might not have had. Also, just a small tip, I think you may already have this dynamic, but I'll say it anyway. As long as she doesn't act like a petulant child when she doesn't get her way and remains grateful for what she has, electronics, expensive clothes, etc., and doesn't throw a tantrum to get her own way, then you and your wife are doing good. Tell those family members to screw off. Your child, your rules and choices. Maybe they should teach their children that other people have different incomes and that not everyone can afford the same things, and that people's value as human beings is not determined by financial wealth, but by how people treat other people. As long as your daughter is respectful, doesn't judge other kids for not having the same things as her, then you have nothing to feel a-holey about. Not the a-hole, not their kid, not their choice. If they called other families to out you, these are not the kind of people you want around your kid anyways. Hopefully their children won't turn into a-holes too. You guys have made choices to be able to do what you can. They made choices too. Every time I start feeling a little jealous of someone with fewer kids being able to do more, I remind myself, I chose to have as many kids as I do. Each choice has its own rewards. Too bad they're so miserable that they can't be happy for you and your daughter. Not the a-hole. You're raising your daughter with the best life you can provide for her. I think what makes this situation the most clear is that at no point did your family express concern that Mariana is the one suffering from being spoiled. It's all about them and how they're jealous of your family's material success. If Mariana is happy, healthy, well-adjusted, and not entitled, nothing else matters. Also, was the implication there that your family members were so jealous of the private school that they reported you to homophobic families to specifically complain about you? Because F that. They're totally fine putting your job and safety in jeopardy. F 'em. Who cares what they think?